it's important that people think on their own and not rely on leadership without proof. Like I'm still trying to get over the fact that there's a study that just came out that 1 in 35 people has a higher troponin levels, and if they go running, they could get a heart attack. Rahman al-Islam.
So right, so the issue is here. You could blame the leadership and blame this person who pushed this on people and so forth. But the question is, they were only able to accomplish this because the people have been primed to be willing to go along with it, because they're afraid of losing their job, because they trust the experts. Let's say there's 5 or 6 reasons that a person agrees to go along with something. That is a spiritual state of being. So they're in a certain spiritual state, in a certain state of mind. That is where the issue is. That's what they had to create in advance in order for them to accomplish this particular tactical objective, because this one thing you're discussing now is just one of hundreds of tactical objectives that affect the people. But in order to do that, they have to prime the people by lowering their spiritual awareness and lowering their spiritual compass and their spiritual backbone and weakening it. So spiritual compass gets you in the right direction, right? And spiritual backbone gives you the backbone to be able to carry through in that direction. So if they can confuse a person's spiritual compass, that it's constantly going zigzagging around or pointing completely in the wrong direction or just confused, and in combination weaken their resilience and their not their resilience, their perseverance and their temerity to push through in even any of the directions, then they have created a population that becomes like jello. But that jello, and I've said this in the beginning, I think people without mass formation psychosis, forget all the mass formation stuff. It's about one individual at a time making a decision that he's going to change the priorities in his life that will maybe open the ports in his thinking to allow himself to become subject to whatever he's being told. So he says this person's an expert, he has to do whatever the expert says. That's opening a port. Now once that's open, the experts will put in, quote unquote experts will put in whatever they want him to do next. The person puts in that he must keep his job at all costs, and his job is the source of his income, then that's another port of vulnerability that's open, that if they threaten his job, he doesn't care about the experts. He says the experts are all wrong, but he's still going to do it, what he's being told to do, because he's afraid of losing his job. You see, everyone has opened a different port of vulnerability. So he'll take...
This really goes back to Achdus Hashem, that a person realizes that that's like Avodah Zarah, like this is the source of my life. And a person has to go back to Hero Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is our one, and the Lord is one. In other words, he is the power of powers. And therefore, if I am faced with this dilemma, I have to do the right thing, even though it's going to be really difficult.
Exactly. You're stating it exactly. And this is what the Rebbe's been talking about since 1950. And before that. And all the Rebbes. Why is it the 7th Rebbe is saying, everyone has to learn Shaykh Amunu, written by the 1st Rebbe? Because the 1st Rebbe wrote it for every human being. And the 7th Rebbe understood that, and he said, now we're at the stage that we can teach it to every human being, that there's nothing besides God Almighty.
In other words, do not ascribe. It's going to be a daily challenge not to ascribe power to any of these things, and to reascribe power to God Almighty, and to pray to him alone, and to make decisions based on my research of what he wants.
Yes, exactly. And the redemption, the messianic redemption, requires all 8 billion people to be in that exact state of mind at every moment of time, constantly. That is what the redemption is. So if I was able to somehow pull that myself together, or with divine assistance be on that wavelength constantly, it still requires you to be on that wavelength, and everyone on this who's watching this, and then everyone else, because otherwise we're going to constantly be being under bombardment of the seduction of this thing and the threats of this thing, and that's not how redemption looks like. Redemption looks like when everyone is experiencing the same divine receptiveness, they see the divine, But the Rebbe brings out something even greater than that, not just Ro Kol Basar Yachtov, that we're all going to see, all fleshy eyes will see there's nothing besides God Almighty. It's not just what's going to happen. This is incredible when you understand it, Rabbi Chirik. If we are merely recipients of divinity, we see and we receive, right? Seeing is a state of receiving, right? Seeing and hearing is a state of receiving. So if we're only recipients to the divine revelation, we are still susceptible. If someone goes off track somewhere, we're still susceptible of hearing or seeing what he's doing and getting confused. Oh, that looks interesting. What is he saying after all? Maybe I should investigate what his claims are, right? So the Rebbe says the redemption is going to be much greater than the state of receiving. Each one of us is going to become givers. We're going to become flowing forth. We're going to become mishpim. We're going to be giving forth. We're no longer going to become the makabels. On one hand, we're going to be receiving God Almighty's divine wisdom. We're not going to not receive, but we're going to each become an infinite source of divine wisdom. And this is what the Rebbe explains is the meaning of the Baal Shem Tov being told by Mashiach, that Mashiach is going to come when your well springs are spread forth. And everyone's able to do Yechidim like you. Yechudim like you. Everyone is able to do Yechudim like you. What does that mean? That everyone in the world is not only going to see the world the way it's correctly, see the reality that there's nothing besides God Almighty, but everyone's going to become themselves a wellsprings. Everyone's going to become a Mayan, an infinite flow of fresh divine wisdom. When you are flowing fresh divine wisdom, you can't be influenced by anybody else. You're not just the recipient. You are the giver. You're the mishpia. So you're going to have 8 billion and then 80 billion and then growing from the 800 billion givers of divine wisdom, broadcasting, carrying forth the message with clarity into the world. That's what redemption looks like. It's going to be, the flow is going to be beyond what we can possibly contemplate, because it's going to be constant flow forward into the world. We're going to be uplifting each other. We're going to be having new, are we going to be like, we won't even have to have a conversation really. We're like, oh, wow, I just realized this. Oh my gosh. And before you even are able to explain it to the next person, you're gonna have a new insight, and he's gonna have a new insight, and they're gonna new insights and new insights. It's just gonna be like this incredible experience of divinity flowing from within us. So may we experience that speedily. That's where we're meant to be. That's where we are. Really, truly, that's where we are. And if we just let go of all the different silly ideas that we have, it's just silly ideas. We know how silly these ideas of limitation and scarcity and impossibility and so forth are to us. We know that, but we just sometimes we feel like, yes, but I got to do this other thing. No, the answer is no. That's what we're getting back to. We get back to prayer, pausing, communicating with God Almighty, being able to hear what he has to say, and make sure that we are in an uplifting way, with a smile, with love, with chesed v'rachamim, with loving kindness and compassionate mercy, just bringing that goodness to the attention of every single human being. So with that, we'll conclude. Everyone should have an amazing Shabbos. We're just in a time of tremendous opportunity over here, that if we can understand, and whenever, I'd like you to take forth this message, and if we could take forth this lesson, when you see a conflict and you're invited to get into the details of the conflict and choose a side, reject that. Just reject that. You don't have to investigate both sides and fully understand both sides to be able to tell that, which one is falser than the other. And then you're supposed to join one side and say, well, it's the less false side. And we'll compromise on some things because we have to be opposed to the people that isn't this person better than the other people out there, and all these kind of lies. You don't have to choose one of the available options. In God Almighty's world, there's infinite options. What each one of us needs to do is get off the binary idea of this side versus that side and say there's an infinite number of possibilities over here. And I know that the real solution is, what God Almighty wants me to see is that there's a truth that is being disguised by both these positions. And just speak like that to people, because you could just get them to become aware that there is another possibility. And if people would just listen to the common sense, that they don't have to come to, I mean, it's nice to have many people come and listen to a shir to come to learn Torah together. And many people as possible should come to learn Torah together. But common sense, which is God Almighty's divine guidance to every person, if they would just put aside all the rules of construct that violate common sense and just get back to common sense, people would become impervious to all these false ideas of the phony dialectics. They say, well, that doesn't make sense, and that doesn't make sense. So I'm not choosing A or B. And if they offer me a C that doesn't make sense, I'm not choosing that either. Or a D doesn't make sense. Not choosing that either. I don't know what the answer is, but I know none of those are the answer. And that itself would then liberate them. They would liberate themselves from the bondage, the enslavement to these choices of these different thinking patterns that they're trying to enslave themselves into and force themselves into a set of rules of how to look at a situation. So that the freedom from bondage is the freedom from the rules that someone else is telling you have to follow to be on the right side. Instead, ask God Almighty for divine guidance. Please show me what you'd have me be and what you'd have me do at this moment in time, and how to proceed to spread the message that there's nothing besides God Almighty.